Hi, everybody. I am Debbie of MadameStitch, and this is a little interview with Fiona of Cosy Rosie UK. This is part of the Granny Stitch Sampler Blanket Crochet Along. I hope you've had a chance to get a couple of those squares done. This is the fourth square releasing as of October, what would that be, 9th, 2023. And just so you know, her pattern for her square, which is called Don't Be Clock Watching, that's, I love that, is free to view on her blog. So you can find that there. All right, so this is the Granny Stitch Sampler Blanket Crochet Along with Cosy Rosie UK. And her square is the Don't Be Clock Watching square. So before we get into anything else, Fiona, share a little bit with my viewers about your business, about you, about all things Cosy Rosie.
Oh, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's always lovely to feature on somebody else's channel and get an opportunity to meet some of your wonderful audience. I'm going to assume that we have a few friends across our audiences because
we probably do.
We do have quite the shared obsession, which when it comes to crochet squares and crochet blankets and using those squares to make more blankets. And it's something that I think, because I have a focus on people that are learning to crochet and people learning different techniques and stitches, sometimes making a square is just about enough for you to get the mastery, learn that technique, master the technique, learn a new stitch or two, and then create something beautiful. And I love the fact that squares can be made in all different sizes, so it makes every blanket that little bit more unique. As you know, I'm a huge fan of the Granny Stitch on its own, but this concept of doing the Granny Stitch sampler crochet along I think is fabulous. I have taken it off of my list now because I also had the same idea, because as you know, I host a square crochet along every year. So the first year that I hosted the hodgepodge blanket, which was 30 different squares, and that had 30 different stitches and different techniques.
That was huge. Yeah. And you did that all by yourself.
Yeah, all my blanket crochet alongs tend to be my designs, if that makes sense. So I'll just kind of just plod along through it and then release each element as it goes along. It's just such a great way of learning lots of different techniques. And although I design so many more things, I have quite an affinity with homewares, obviously loving cozy things like that feeds into so many different areas, from shawls and ponchos, blankets, cushions, and anything that you think of that's cozy is 100% my bag, really.
Fabulous. And I love the concept of this blanket for the very reasons that you have talked about. First of all, they're big squares. They're 12-inch squares, just a little bit bigger than we normally think of for a blanket. But asking 12 different designers to put their love of whatever they do in their business paired with a Granny Stitch, I think it turned out to be just a fabulous collaborative project. And I think this might be the first of many in my case, because I love collaborating with my best friend, crochet designers. All right, so I want to get right into your square. And I want you to talk a little bit. First off, let's show everybody what your original looks like. So this is the original that Fiona came up with the colors that they chose. And I have to say, these are so on brand for you. This is so you.
They literally are my brand colors, apart from there isn't enough pink, in my opinion. But
absolutely, I know, I can see that. And I'm just going to pop this up really quickly because I want you to see what it looks like in the blanket colors. And this is so on brand for me.
I must admit, I mean, I worked it up both in a solid color, and when I filmed it, I thought, you know what, when I filmed the video tutorial, that you can find that over on my Cosy Rosie Crochet YouTube channel. There's a full video tutorial for this one. And I thought, you know what, because I wrote it both in a solid color like you've done it. My original was a solid, and that's why it still looks so textured. And I thought, I wonder how good it would look in different colors. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to film it in the different colors, and I can't believe how well it worked. You know how sometimes you think changing color every row is a lot of work,
Right.
but I really think it's worth it when it
Well,
comes to.
I love the way it changes the look of the square. I mean, it highlights different things.
Yeah.
So in the solid color one, you really see the surface.
Yes.
So it really highlights the surface texture.
Yeah.
In the multicolored, it highlights the grannies and the puffs. So
Yes.
it's just whatever you're looking for.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I mean, I'm going to tell you more about the stitches that I chose, because I think I've used all the stitches that are in this square I've used in other designs this year, which is probably why I kept pulling them out of the bag, and I was working up around like, no, that doesn't work. Let's change it back. And they're all my most favorite stitches. The granny stitch is forever going to have a very special place in my heart. And I think those of us that learned to make a granny square as their first project will have a special affinity with it. I will admit that I've never made I have made one plain granny square blanket, and I will never make another, because only because the opportunity to make such textured, intricate squares, for me, I find so fascinating. Even just taking a normal stitch and working it in the round, or working it in rows and adding those together to create a blanket, just is so much more interesting to me. So I'm not putting the granny square down, because I do love it, but I love how it can be developed into lots of different things, the way it's been done. I mean, you've got some stunning square designs, from really simplistic, worked in rows with that herringbone. You can tell I've looked through all of them.
Yes.
I can't remember the designer offhand, who's worked 3 colors in one square, if you know which one I mean. So there's blocks.
Yes,
of
the
color.
3-section granny. Yes.
Love that. I know that Crochet by Trista's, she's done a combination of the traditional granny and the solid. And then someone else has done another variation of that. I could go on. I'm so obsessed with a granny stitch sampler blanket, because it's such a beautiful pattern. It really is, all together.
And I think what was interesting, I don't want to get too far away from your square, because
I know,
you are the star of the show today. But I think what was interesting is I did not specify how intricate or how simple I wanted any square to be. I just said the granny stitch has to be in your square.
Yeah.
How you work that out is up to you. So we actually have a square as well in mosaic crochet, which it blew my mind. I'm more of a simple person when it comes to granny squares. I can make a traditional basic granny square until the cows come home, and none the wiser. But I'm this blanket has actually, and your square in particular, has gotten me really jazzed about adding those different textures and stitches and whatnot. So just talk a little bit about maybe start at the center of the square and work your way out, and talk about some of the stitches that you put into the square.
I'm looking down here because I've got my square in front of me as well, because it's reignited another passion in me, I will be honest, because I've done so many squares over the last few years. When you set the challenge, if you like, of use the granny stitch, obviously I say the same. We've been together for the Stitching with Granny event as well, haven't we? Do that together every year. And obviously we always love to throw in a granny stitch here and there, and we're used to putting it into different formats. But to take the traditional granny stitch and put it amongst other stitches is something that I wanted to do. And I think you almost gave me carte blanche to just get on with it. So earlier this year, I created a granny square that was a coaster that used the V-stitch and the granny stitch together. And that created some really nice textures in there. And I wanted to take it to the next level doing this square. I will admit I have never used working into, okay, we'll start from the middle. I'm jumping ahead already because I'm too excited.
I love it.
The middle, I can't help it. So the middle of the square is obviously a circle. This is not the first time I've done granny circle into a square. I have a whole series called the Running Rings collection, which uses the traditional granny circle into a granny square, which then, I can't even tell you, there's a teapot, there's a vest top, there's cushions, there's wall hangings. It's a whole collection because I was so obsessed with this, and every single one is different. So this square actually starts with a V-stitch beginning of a circle, which then feeds out to some really nice texture, a bit of a throwback to the sunburst granny, I suppose, but I think the numbers are different. I'm not sure. I've never made a granny.
It's the same concept, but a little different.
Yeah, as I say, I've never made a starburst granny square, which I know probably sounds insane to people, but I've just never done it. And then obviously it goes into showcasing that much loved stitch, which is the granny stitch used in a circle. And then there's some half double crochets, which can then be worked into the third loop to create that first level of surface texture. The pattern pretty much repeats itself, except a row on from there, we work puff stitches to create a corner, and then it feeds out from that puff stitch round into squaring off the circle, and then it goes into a combination of the granny stitch into the mesh stitch. Again, I have an all meshed up collection. That wasn't in my thought process as I did it. And then it kind of feeds all the way through. There's the odd granny stitch here and there, even a couple of rows from the end. There's a whole row of granny stitches but again, it's mixed in with some double crochets. It goes on, and I didn't know this when I designed it, but very simply, you could just keep repeating the last 5 rounds and make it a square blanket.
I know. I love the way that works. Mine is actually kind of the same way. It's a little bit simpler. I don't have as many different stitches in mine, but the concept is kind of the same. And I've absolutely fallen in love with the working in the third loop, because I truly, when I get something done, I'm faced with weaving in the ends. I want to just get that. I just want to get that done and move on. I don't want to do anything on you. So I love the third loop because it creates that faux surface stitch that I don't have to do anything. I just move on. And it's great.
And everything's hidden. Everything's hidden.
Everything is hidden. It's wonderful. And once you get used to, I know the third loop, working in the third loop can be tricky when you're first starting out.
Definitely.
Because finding that third loop can be tricky.
Once you've found the first one, you're good to go.
Yeah.
But I think finding that first one, especially if you've slip stitched, can be a bit of a challenge with this pattern, because especially if you work it in multiple colors, you fasten off in the corners. So you start in a corner, not in a third loop. So it makes it that little bit easier. But I will say, when I worked up this version, I used Furl's Wonder yarn. I know it's a premium, and I know it's not in everyone's budget. And it is, at the end of the day, it's only 100% acrylic. It is one of my favorite acrylics because of the sheen that it has. I hope the camera's picking it up.
Here, let me get out of that.
Really, really easy.
Yeah, try it one more time. Show that. Yeah, I do love that.
It just got that ever so slight sheen to it, a bit like American brand in sausages, as I call them.
Well,
Karen So Soft.
Yeah.
Got that similar sheen to it. But finding the third loop was so easy because the stitch definition is so good.
Yeah.
If you've got a fluffy yarn, it's going to make it so much harder.
Oh, absolutely. I also talked about in my square, when you're working around that third loop, I have a single crochet that works into that third loop. So it's a half double crochet, but then it's a single crochet that works into the third loop. At the corner, after you work the corner, that hidden stitch is really hard to find the loop. And I actually had to work a little bit to figure out which one of they just smack right up against each other and are very difficult to see. But I actually have a tutorial on my squares website, a blog post that shows where that loop is and how to find it, because that's really important in the stitch count.
Definitely. I think, even though, I mean, I will be honest, this is not, I would say that this is an intermediate pattern, possibly. I don't say the A word because I don't believe in such a thing, but it's definitely, if you're an adventurous beginner, as I call them, you can do this. But I had a reasonably new person to crochet who's never tested before, and she tested this for me. And yes, she made mistakes, but she also learned an awful lot. She didn't have access to the video tutorial, and I think if she had, it would have been perfect, because she knew to count the stitches. She knew that there's something gone wrong here. What have I done? So I always say to people, if you're doing a pattern, please ask me the question, because I have no qualms. If I can, I will answer you within 24 hours.
Yes.
Obviously, I do have to point out there is some initials in my business name that says where I live for a reason. People,
it does indeed.
Unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, I'm very grateful, but the biggest part of my audience is American crocheters. You do seem a lot more. There's more of you in America. There really is. And I think the passion for the craft is actually, it's getting a bit more in the UK, but especially the help of TikTok, because the youngsters are coming through. But more people knit here than crochet still.
Yes. Yeah. Crochet is just booming here in the United States. And I'm thrilled to death, because like we've proven in this particular project, the possibilities are limitless as to what you can do.
100%.
And the looks that you can get, the variety, it's just, it just, well, I'm getting chills. So, and it's warm here today. So
I can't say the same.
Oh, I'm really sorry. But I just love the possibilities that we're able to offer everyone, especially in this particular project, but in overall in our businesses. And what I love what you're trying to do for your crocheters, providing them with all the resources to help them fall in love with crochet and challenge themselves to not just do one stitch. While I love my basic granny square, I know all different kinds of stitches, and I love using them and making them and all of that stuff. So I really appreciate what you bring to the business, and I love your square. By the way, Fiona, you never told us how you came up with the name, because I love that name.
Well, I was showing a friend a picture of just the first bit of the square. So that looks like a clock, and that was it. It was done.
Isn't it funny how we come up with the inspiration?
There is one other element to it, because as you know, I was slightly delayed in putting my submission in, and I was clock watching, so I was like, oh my god, I need to get this done, need to get it done. So,
oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So it's prophetic as well.
Yes. Yeah, and you know me, I really hate to be late for anything. As we were waiting for you, I was going to be on there 10 minutes early, just in case I need to download something, or so for me to be late, there's something, but yeah. So I apologize.
I appreciate that. Promptness is a professional quality, and we appreciate it completely.
My dog Fiona decided to come and say hello. Sorry.
Oh, well, my dog is outside the door, otherwise we would have noise in here. So, who is this? Oh,
this
my
is
goodness.
Emily.
Oh, what a sweetheart. And I'm going to take a guess to say she is a King Charles Cavalier.
Yes, she is indeed. And she doesn't normally kiss me, so she really must be uncomfortable.
Oh my goodness. Well, I just, Fiona, I can't thank you enough for sitting down with me and talking about your wonderful design and overall being a fabulous participant in this beautiful blanket. I know that you and I are going to be collaborating again. So 100%. I can't wait for the next opportunity. So to everyone who's watching, get making those, don't be watching the clock granny squares. And when you do, post them in the Facebook group, and you can see this on YouTube as well. So thanks for watching, and have a great day. Bye, Fiona.